Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really incredible and honestly quite moving concept: Peace Nest, building safe spaces for the soul and body. We're going to explore how two entirely different organizations are tackling a very fundamental, universal human need, and that is safety. But we're not just talking about physical safety, we're talking about safety for the soul too. But before we really get into the weeds, I want you to ask yourself something. What does a safe space actually look like to you? Does it have four walls and a roof? Is it a tight-knit community? Or, could it be something entirely digital? The beauty of what we're about to uncover today is that a safe space can take radically different forms depending entirely on what the people who need it are going through. Okay, let's dive into this. I want to anchor our whole journey today with a thought from Fedlan Kilajaslan, the founder of the Grant O'Keefe Foundation. He says, charity is most powerful when it comes from genuine commitment, not obligation. This is absolutely crucial. This isn't just about throwing money at a problem to feel good. It's about a deep moral commitment to the people who are so often just overlooked by society. Keep that idea of genuine commitment right at the front of your mind as we check out our first initiative. So let's look at case study 1, emotional infrastructure in Bangladesh. There's this young founder, MD Tanjim Sheikh, who built a youth-led nonprofit called Peace Nest, and this entire organization is dedicated to mental health advocacy and providing completely free resources to kids who need them. This emotional infrastructure is essentially a three-pronged approach. By collaborating with psychologists and neurologists from all over the world, they actually launched the very first structured peer support program in Bangladesh. The goal? To build mental health support systems literally right inside of schools. Then, they paired that with highly accessible resources through their NeuroZen magazine. And finally, they created something they call the Silent Room. So what is the Silent Room? Well, it's a completely free, anonymous support space for people struggling mentally and emotionally who either lack access to or just simply cannot afford professional help. It exists entirely as an intangible digital safe space. It was built so that no teenager ever has to face overwhelming darkness alone. If you literally have no one in your life to talk to, the Silent Room is there. It's just a remarkable example of building a tangible support network out of pure empathy. Let's move to and see how this builds into our second example. We're going to shift gears and look at the Grant O'Keefe Foundation. While our first case study was all about building digital emotional networks, this foundation is actually taking the concept of a peace nest and building it into the physical world in Warsaw, Poland. Case study 2 focuses on physical infrastructure, a true sanctuary for special needs children and single mothers. I want you to imagine for a second fleeing a conflict zone with a child who has complex special educational needs. Maybe they have severe physical limitations like arthrogryposis. Mothers in this exact heartbreaking situation are leaving behind their entire support systems in Ukraine. And the existing schools in Poland, they are already stretched totally thin. So this project is stepping up to build a physical sanctuary, a highly specialized school dedicated specifically to these refugee children and their incredibly courageous mothers. To really put the scale of this physical safe space into perspective, think about this number: 7 million euros. That is the estimated budget for this state-of-the-art facility. We are not talking about a temporary tent or a makeshift classroom in a basement. No, this is a massive, permanent, high-level investment into the lives of displaced families. And incredibly, it's fully supported by the foundation without them seeking outside fundraising. But hold that massive budget in your head and contrast it with this highly focused number: 130. The entire school's capacity is designed for just 130 children, ranging from ages 2 to 16. When you pair a 7 million euro budget with exactly 130 kids, you immediately get a sense of the incredible depth of specialized care we're talking about here. The therapeutic support, the highly individualized learning experiences, it's all about profound, life-changing quality rather than just sheer volume. It really works like a domino effect. The project starts by providing a highly specialized learning space tailored to complex physical and cognitive needs. That reliable environment directly supports the children's emotional well-being through trauma-informed care. But it doesn't stop with the kids. Because the mothers finally have a safe, reliable place for their children, it empowers those single mothers to seek employment and rebuild their own lives. And ultimately, that encourages full community integration between the Ukrainian refugees and the local Polish residents. So a big question here is, how do you actually literally translate empathy into bricks and mortar? Let's take a look at the architecture of inclusion and explore the practical guidelines for how you physically build a safe space. So the crucial point is that a building itself can actually care for its occupants. Take access, for example. That means ensuring wide, safe clearances for mobility aids and handling complex vehicular drop-offs. Then there's health and well-being, maintaining strict thermal comfort and highly accessible personal care facilities for kids who can't always communicate their needs. Flexibility means using things like movable partitions so you can adjust a room's environment on the fly. And finally, safety. This relies on good sightlines for passive supervision. You want to keep the kids perfectly secure, but without making the place feel like an institution.
Think about the sheer logistics of a special needs school. You might have multiple specialized vehicles arriving all at once to drop off non-ambulant children. Transferring a child in a wheelchair safely out of a van takes time, and it has to happen in the rain, the snow, everything. So the design absolutely has to include large, sheltered drop-off zones that are completely and safely separated from where people are walking.
And this brilliantly illustrates the next point. An inclusive environment has to promote a sense of self-worth from the very second you pull up to it. With warm exterior lighting and beautiful modern architectural lines, the building says, this is a place of dignity, learning, and hope. It emphatically does not look like a cold hospital or a rigid institution. Once you walk through those doors, the layout has to make logical sense. When you're designing for severe mobility issues, minimizing the distance a child has to travel is everything. By organizing the spaces so they logically flow from the youngest pupils to the oldest and keeping shared medical or therapy rooms right in the center, every kid can get to where they need to go without exhausting themselves just trying to navigate the hallway. Now, beyond just the floor plan, we have to talk about this sensory experience. Think about how a loud, super bright room makes you feel when you're already having a stressful day. Now multiply that, and imagine being a child prone to intense sensory overload, perhaps a child with autism. A true physical safe space demands glare-free, controllable lighting, meticulously controlled acoustics so background noise doesn't randomly spike, and therapeutic, calming textures. The building's atmosphere itself becomes a quiet, soothing background to their learning. And that care extends right into the outdoors. Access to nature is maximized through tactile wooden decking and perfectly graded accessible walkways. A child using a walker or a wheelchair can easily and independently roll across bridges right over sensory gardens. It completely removes the physical barriers to social interaction and outdoor play, which, as we all know, is just vital for any child's development and happiness. Now, what's really interesting about this specific setup is how medical facilities are just seamlessly woven into the school itself. Usually, a specialized hydrotherapy pool feels incredibly cold and clinical, right? But here, through really careful architectural design, abundant natural lighting, and beautiful warm tile work, it feels a lot more like a high-end wellness retreat. It gives the kids the exact essential medical support they need right inside the school walls. That means their mothers don't have to drag them across the city for exhausting, separate medical appointments. It's a total game changer. Honestly, even the corridors are doing heavy lifting. The design uses natural light and what's called surface modulation, basically variations in the texture of the walls and floors. This actively helps children with visual impairments learn independent wayfinding techniques just by feeling where they are in the building. It's not just an aesthetic choice, it's a tool that empowers them to navigate their world safely and completely on their own. So bringing it all together, we're really looking at two sides of the exact same coin. On one hand, we have emotional safe spaces, like Tangem Sheikh's youth-led Peace Nest in Bangladesh. They use digital networks, peer support, and just genuine empathetic listening to make sure no soul is left in the dark alone. On the other hand, we have physical safe spaces, like the Grant Akiev Foundation's project in Warsaw. They use inclusive architecture, careful sensory design, and millions of euros to protect the physical bodies and the futures of displaced refugee families. Whether they are built with computer code or with actual bricks, they share the exact same beautiful mission. Which brings us to our final parting thought for this explainer. We've just seen what happens when brilliant, deeply empathetic minds commit to creating safe spaces for the people who need them the absolute most. So the challenge for all of us now is this. Taking inspiration from these incredible humanitarian designs, how can we look at our own communities, our own local schools, and our own digital spaces, and design them to ensure that we leave absolutely no one behind? Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today.